Greetings viewers, Eric the Car Guy. I am excited. See the smile on my face? And the reason is because today I start the modifications of the Ford Fairmont. Yes, the day has finally come. I've had this car a little more than a year. It's time to make it really cool. And to do that, I have frame connectors. Now, it's a great place to start. I don't have to worry about having the engine in or rear end or any of that kind of stuff. And this is probably going to be one of the biggest upgrades, and I would say probably the best bang for the buck. Now, the reason why these frame connectors are important is because they add structural integrity and rigidity to the vehicle. Now, there is a downside. They're heavy, so it does add weight. But I think the rigidity I'm going to gain in exchange for the added weight, well, and maybe I can find some other place to lose some weight. But anyway, Fox bodies are what's called a unibody construction, meaning they don't have a full frame that runs front to back in the vehicle that supports the whole chassis. What they have is the body itself is part of the structure of the vehicle. Therefore, these frame connectors will act something like a frame and give us that structural rigidity. And to prove my point, as far as the weakness of the Fox body, I can do it quite simply. Come on over here. Okay, we're over at the driver's door. We're on the ground. All four wheels are on the ground. I open the door. I close the door. Works just fine, right? Now watch what happens when I raise the vehicle up. Okay, now that the wheels are off the ground, same test. I open the door. I gotta close it. It does not close. Why? Because the whole car is doing this. It's all bending in the middle because I've lifted it up, and since it's up off the ground, the door will no longer align to close. That's how much body flex this vehicle has. With the wheels back on the ground, this is everything that came in the box for the frame connectors, just as you see it here, all wrapped in plastic. Looks like I have some instructions here and some other plates and bolts and such. A couple more brackets. Let's get a closer look. Before I got started, I just wanted to mock these up just to see where they would go. You can see right here, there's a structural part that comes down. There's a plate that gets welded up here by the parking brake cable. This fits up here. This is where the seat bolts to. And there's this bracket that goes in actually like this. There's a bracket that goes in like this that's going to be welded in place. It's going to connect to those two spots. And then further back here, it's going to get welded to this part of the structure. So over on this side, when you go to try to place this up in the same location, can you see the problem? This side has, for the transmission mount, these lips that come down. It's not going to lay flat, so that's a problem. I've already been thinking on this. I think probably the easiest solution is just to cut this here, cut it here, and hammer it flat. Then I can put a weld in here or whatever. I don't think it's going to hurt it too much structurally. If I'm too worried, I can come back in here and put a weld back there. I'm still going to go for this today, but this is the only obstacle that I see, and like I said, I think I'm going to cut it here. Now my plan simply is to come in here, now that I've got it all mocked up and using the lift for this, mark the areas where it's going to make contact, where I'm potentially going to weld. Then I'm going to grind it all down to bare metal so that I've got a good place to weld onto. We can't weld it while it's up on a lift. We have to load the suspension to do that. So that way we don't weld it up so that our doors won't close. You follow me? So what I'll do is I'll get everything prepped out and ready. Then when it's time to weld, I'll lower it down on those jack stands. And I'll put the jack stands under the rear end and up here under the A-frames so that we can support it like it's on the suspension. So I'll just have it lifted up on jack stands. I'll weld it into place, and then we can lift it back up and check the doors, see how successful we were. Before we go there, I'm going to take a quick look at the instructions. I think these are our new seat bolts. Maximum Motorsports. I'm going to read through these and I'll give you the cliff notes in a minute. Okay, I've read through the instructions, and basically my plan is just about spot on with what they describe in these pages. I did find out what these plates were for, and let's go over that plan right now. We'll start by removing these rear seat bolts from the inside, and then I'll be installing these brackets on either side that accommodate the supports. Well, and I'm not going to tighten these down all the way. I'm just going to leave them just a little bit loose until I'm done welding. So I mean just a hair, and then when I'm done welding and everything, I'll just hit them a little bit and they'll just have just a little bit of tension on them is what I'm going to try and go for here. These plates, what these are for, or when we're all done, they actually go in this area here to help reinforce. See how this is bent in here? It's real important that these get back up into place to give it some structural integrity. If not, this is a weak point here. But these plates will cure that issue. Other than that, it's just like I said, we're gonna be cleaning things up while it's up in the air, just because it'll be easier. But then when it's all said and done, we go to weld, we'll have to put it down on the ground on jack stands. As for this guy right here, what they say to do, and they actually cover this, is you just cut this off. So I'm just gonna cut this section off of here, and I'm gonna end up welding this to the subframe. So whatever's left, I'm gonna weld to the subframe. It'll help give it its structure. But I'm also gonna have to come over and remove like these little lines, anything else that might get in the way or get damaged by the welding that I'm about to do. Here are the bolts that I'm going to be replacing. They hold the rear part of the seat on. Now if this has bucket seats, it would have another bolt over here. They have provisions for that, so I can actually get through the carpet to reach this bolt. This is a stud that I'm probably going to have to turn out. Same thing on the other side. On this side, I can just put in, I have the supplied washer on the bolt. I wonder if this is the same thread pitch. I found the appropriate tap. Then I'm just going to run through this just to be sure. Isn't much nicer now. Just going to make sure and start it by hand. Let's get this other side out. Got a pair of vice grips. I'm gonna try to spin it out with. Will work, but this I'm sure will be a tedious process. Don't make me get out my torch. You wouldn't like me when I get my torch. Ah, darn it. Okay, I got the vehicle lifted up now. Why? Because I can. And I really do think I'll just get my torch. This thing's starting to make me mad. There isn't a bolt on the planet that won't succumb to the big red wrench. Gotta do the tap again. Well, let's move on to the other side. Seems like a lot of work to get to this point, but we now have 4 our mounts. They're rocking and ready. They got a little slot back and forth, grateful for that. And as I stated, I'm just gonna put these up here in place loosely for now. This is bare metal and it will rust. In order to prevent that, I want to paint it. I've got some paint, some primer / paint. It's both, just for this type of thing. And I'm going to paint the tops of everything. When I'm all done, I'm going to paint over everything, but I'm not going to be able to paint the top when it's all in place. So what I'll do now is I'll get everything in there, mark it up where it's supposed to go, so that I'm sure that, you know, I've got things in place. And then after that, I will remove everything, get it all prepped for paint, paint it, come back and do my grinding on all my undercoating and everything, so I've got clean metal to weld to. I'm also going to need to remove this parking brake. You can see that it's got this bracket that's bolted that comes way close. I'm probably going to weld right here. So I'm actually probably going to cut or grind the bottom of this off just to accommodate that and be really mindful with my welds. One thing they said specifically was not to weld in front here, but just weld on the sides. They say you can stitch weld, like I could come in here after the fact and like put a weld here. Like they said 1 inch weld for every 3 inches. So like here, I could probably put a couple here and here, and then on the other side, but tell you the truth, I don't think I'm gonna need, that might be a bit of an overkill. I'm gonna mark everything with this marker so I know the areas to clean. But then back here, I got this whole area around the outside. Now, once again, don't weld in this area. This is the other thing, they wanted this mounted flush up here, so it was like one continuous line coming down from this part of the support. Now the Fairmont doesn't have a computer or anything like that on it, but especially if you have a fuel injected car and you're about to do some welding on it, I'd disconnect the negative battery cable just to be on the safe side. I'm doing it here because my door is open and it's probably gonna stay open, and I don't want my dome light running the battery dead. Got a little bit of 220 sandpaper here. I'm just gonna scuff the surface up a little bit just so that I've got a tooth for the paint to go into. I've got these things laid out here in the same way that they go in the vehicle, so I remember where they go. I'll double check and triple check. I mean, you don't want to start welding on something and find out that it's never gonna work. This isn't like real body work. It's gonna be under the vehicle. Nobody's really gonna see it. I'm just trying to create a surface that I can paint with, just to give it a little bit of a bite. I'm just here to put coating on the backside. I'm gonna paint everything else once it's all welded up in place. For now, I'm just gonna cover the part that I won't be able to cover when it's on the car. Whenever I paint stuff, like for real paint stuff, I go for the thin layer to start with. Let it settle in for a minute, and then I'll come back with a second coat. That can set up while we're doing our grinding. Before I start welding and grinding, I want to get some stuff out of the way. Now, I know I talked about this emergency brake cable and how I was going to handle it. I was going to unbolt the bracket and everything. I'm not going to do that. So what if it stays in place? It's just held on by this little clip here. Seriously, that just landed right on my shoulder. Now this, I'm hoping that I can just pull back. Well, there's tension on the cable. And that tension is controlled right here at this point. I'm thinking I'll try some of this Zep Super Rust Breaker stuff on this here, and I'm just going to loosen it up, try to get rid of tension. If I get rid of the tension, I'm sure that I can get that other cable off of there without a problem. That is being remarkably well behaved. Right, well there's another mounting point up here underneath this lift pad that I can't quite get to. But I have a thought. If I just take this pivot down, which it looks like it's just sort of held in there, I might get the slack I need to get this out of here. Looks like it's spring loaded. If nothing else, I can just disconnect this front cable altogether. And I can. Haha, I got all I need. Now where are we at? You see what I'm seeing here? If I leave that hanging down like that and I put that frame connector in, I'm gonna wrap this right over the top of it. So I'm gonna temporarily put it back up into place so that I'm sure to remember to keep it there, because if not, oh, that would suck. I'm just gonna take this cable up out of the way and put it on a lift arm for now, so it can't fall down. Here's a tube for the EVAP. They mentioned on some later models, they have like brake and fuel lines running along here. You have to unclip and move out of the way. And that wasn't so bad. Once again, sticking that up under the lift arm. Now I'm going to come in here and do my cutting and deal with this transmission mount. My air compressor is really not meant to run a cutoff wheel, but we managed. I'll be able to weld this right to the new support. But now that we have everything out of the way, it's time to do some grinding. All right, let's test fit it, and see if it matches up with the welds here on the passenger side. Now, this area over here seems pretty good. Up in the front also seems good. I'll be able to get those in there. These aren't a problem because they bolt onto those brackets. Back here, I just need to do a little more grinding. I went all the way over here, but I really need to move inward a bit and grind this area. I'll mark around that and recheck it. This here looks good, but check out my gap. So I went a bit too far with my cut. It's not the end of the world because I can just put something in between here and weld it in. But if you look at it, when the rail comes in, it's not flush with this. So it's actually over about that amount. So my cut was good. It just, like I said, it's over a bit. Oh, the other thing it said, there's holes. Like right here, I don't know if you can see that. There's holes. You got to fill those holes when you weld. Okay, what I did here, because I couldn't quite get in here to grind, is I just bent these ends down, came up in here, did my grinding. I'm gonna have to find some kind of spacer, something to put in between there. But I believe I've got everything else dialed in. This passenger side is ready for welding. I'm also going to use my trusty sandpaper to scuff up the areas that got paint on them that need to be welded. Let's put our bracket in place. That's what I want. Now let's fit it one last time and jump over to the driver's side. Funny thing is, it sort of fit better before the bracket. Right now, it's like this whole thing needs to go over. Because of this, I may have to elongate these holes to accommodate it because the whole thing is shifted this way. So these holes need to go longer this way. Now I can't go too far, but I'm gonna take it about as far as I can in this direction. Hoping that did the trick. Still over to one side, but I can clamp it. Yeah, I'll clamp this in place. Let's jump over to the driver's side and do the same thing. Get everything ground up and ready. And just so that we know ahead of time with this one, I put the bracket in place. Looks like the same thing. Looks like I could use a little more. Seriously, I should not have to work this hard. It felt like I could use just a little bit more. These brackets are the bane of my existence right now. Everything fits fine without them. As soon as you get them up in there, everything goes to poop. After some fiddling, I'm thinking that I need to shave a little bit of metal off here. I could fill in the weld on this side, no big deal. But I'm going to take a little bit off of this side and a little bit off of this side to try to make it so that I can get that bar over a little bit. And it's just, that's what it is. It's just, it's binding up right here. Well, let's hope it works this time. Well, there's still a ways to go. All right, I can force it up onto here by putting pressure on. But you can see there's a fairly large gap. I can just stick my finger behind it. I'm gonna have to clamp this over. I'm pretty much gonna have to bend this piece into place. Well, I'm gonna look at the instructions. I almost think they want you to tack this into place first. Then they tell you to tack this and do the ends last. So in other words, work from the center out. This really didn't leave too much of a gap. Nothing that I'm really concerned about. I can weld that, no problem. Some of you have probably already thought about this, but this could really just be the flexing of the body. Because you remember at the beginning of the video, I showed you how much body flex there was. So with it being up on a lift like this, it could very well be it is just flexing and twisting while it's up in the air. Grinding is loud. I just put some earplugs in. I just need to make a few adjustments. I can make that work. We'll just hold it in place, tack it down, make it happen. Clean up the grinds, and get ready to weld. Gonna do one last cleaning with this guy here, also on the subframe connectors, so that the places where it's gonna get welded is also clean. Looking at the pictures in the book, or in the instructions, these frame connectors actually come back to here, and I believe it's been mentioned to me a couple of times how the Fairmont is slightly longer than a Mustang. So that'd be one of the differences. Another problem I'm probably gonna run into is with the drive shaft, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But for now, I'm gonna lower this thing down, get it on jack stands, or actually what I might do is I might try to put everything into position and then lower it down on jack stands and get to welding. Jack stands are roughly in position. I'm gonna lower the car down to get them close. So I try to catch these A-arms. I can close all the doors now. It's just like as if it was on the ground. Let's see how stuff lines up now. Here's where we're at now. Actually seems to be a little more well behaved. We still got a pretty sizable gap back here that we're gonna have to adjust. So what I'll probably do is I'll tack the front and everything in place, and then I'll get a floor jack with like a wood block or something, push that up into position, tack it down, take things from there. About this other side, same deal, huge gap. It doesn't look like it came into line anymore. Yeah, it didn't. It's still off. I'm still gonna have to clamp it down to get that one in place. Okay, here's the setup. I got my welder. I've also got my floor jack with a 2x4, well 4x4 on it that I can use to push things up into position somewhere around here. Got my clamps, so I'm going to get everything into position, tack it down, and then weld it the rest of the way when it's all ready to go. Well, I do say stay dirty. I'll find me a good ground. This will work. I'm not going to put a lot of pressure on it, just enough. I don't like creepers. Never have. I'm gonna tack it on the other side real quick. Let me know if I'm on fire. Well, let's see if that holds. It does. That should do it. Let's move to another position. Now I am doing this somewhat out of order as compared to what the instructions say. And mainly that's because I've got such distortion here. I'm actually gonna start at the front and work my way towards the back, but I'm gonna wait till the end to weld the bracket. They actually say weld the bracket first. The reason I'm doing that is I wanna make sure that everything is attached and secured. Once I get my good welds in place, I'll lift it up and tighten everything all down again. There we go. I hope this works. Why is my helmet not working? Like I said, I can't see a thing. Lucky for me, I had another helmet. Hopefully this one works. It does. Let's see if that stays. And it does. I guess I'll tack the bracket in place and then do some welding. We will get through this. Not cool. The side is all tacked into place. Now I want to do the other side so that I'm evenly stressed. I guess that's probably the best way I can put it. Evenly stressed. By the way, I do have my fire extinguisher handy. I have the whole time. Same drill on this side. A little bit of pressure on this center point. Just a little bit. Not lifting the car up, just pushing it up into position. That should do it. I don't think I need to use the clamp, but I'm going to because I can. Tiny rocks. Creeper's worst enemy. get this stuff out of the way and weld this in for real. I had a thought. Now that stuff is tacked into place, let's check the doors. Well, so far so good. It is still up on the suspension though. I'm gonna weld it all down now, and then we'll put it on the lift and try it. I smell delicious. I'm gonna lift this thing up, maybe do a little touch up, but I think I'm done. Well, let's see if this did anything. Here we go. Almost. Well, it's honestly not that much better. Maybe it's a roll cage that I need, or I need to learn how to weld, one of the two. Maybe both. Let's get rid of these jack stands and junk. Okay, I'm gonna tighten up the brackets. Here it is, the embarrassing welds. I know, they're not great. They're okay, they'll probably hold. I'm still practicing at my welding, and practicing laying on the ground in odd positions, I don't recommend it. I recommend like doing it someplace where you got room to move around. But hey, like I said, it's in there. You know, now that I've gotten these tightened up, I'm gonna try that door again. I mean, it did close better. Before it wouldn't close at all, but I don't know if this helped or not. Okay, here's what they're like on the ground. Well, they didn't get any worse. Now I'll lift it up now that everything's all bolted down. Okay, wheels are off the ground. Still needs work. It's better. I mean, I can close it now, whereas before I couldn't, but I think I still got a little ways to go. Now, here's the question. Is this going to be a roll cage that fixes this, or can I be okay with this? I suppose once I get it put together, I'll have a better idea, because I'll know how the suspension reacts with it. We'll just have to wait and see. It's late. I can leave this here, come back, work on it more later, and then we'll wrap this up. But right now, I need some dinner and a break. Okay, well, a little bit of time has passed since I welded the connectors in, and a little disappointed that the closing of the doors didn't quite work out the way I'd hoped. And looking back at that footage, I can see that the door itself might need a little bit of adjustment, but just for the heck of it, I decided to take it out for a drive. And I was surprised. Actually, I was very surprised. The car is a lot more stable, a lot more sure of itself, and a lot less noisy going over bumps. It feels way more solid than it used to. So this was not all for naught. Is there still some body flex? Yes. Is it as bad as it used to be? Not even close. In fact, it almost feels like a different car. I'm very pleased with the outcome. However, there's something that's not quite right, and I also found this out a little bit after the fact. For that, we're gonna have to go back to the shop, put this back up on the lift, and I'll show you. Early on, I mentioned that these frame connectors might be a little bit short, and I was correct in that. For a Mustang, this would be good because these would actually be coming back to about here, I believe. whereas this Fairmont is about 4 inches longer than a Mustang, which makes installing these somewhat problematic. Don't get on me too bad about my welds. I'm probably going to grind and redo them. But that leaves me faced with something to think about here, because I could just leave it as is. As I said, I went out and drove it, and there is big improvements as far as the handling of this vehicle. In fact, so much so, it broke one of my stabilizer links. Earlier when I was driving over those railroad tracks, one of my stabilizer links let go. Yes, because it was old, but I have a feeling because now the suspension, now that the body isn't flexing so much, the suspension is doing all the work as far as moving up and down, and it's not the whole car twisting side to side like this. It was meant to be a grocery getter. It was never meant to, you know, act as a performance vehicle. So we're altering things a little bit, but this leaves me thinking, okay, I didn't quite get the rigidity I was hoping for with closing the doors, but can I get more rigidity if I extend these back? Like maybe either extend this back to here, or if I also thought about undoing this weld and welding a plate into this area that this could weld onto, so that this area would be reinforced by like a piece of metal and this would attach to that metal. Or if I should try to attach something to the outside of this to extend it, and how much benefit would I get from that? I mean, would it be worth it, or am I good where I'm at? That's what I'm kind of struggling with right now, and that's why I haven't finished it up. I still need to go in and weld the plates into this area, and I also need to go in and clean up some of those welds like I spoke about earlier, not to mention fixing this notched area for the transmission mount. So we still have a little bit to go, but I want to take some time to sort of think this out and come up with a plan so that I don't make things worse. That's the main takeaway here, is I do not want to make things worse. I'm trying to make this better, and so far this is. I would say as far as bang for the buck, these frame connectors, awesome. I'm definitely do it, because for, what were these things? These things were like 150 bucks, and I've completely stiffened the chassis of this grocery getter. So just this in and of itself did wonders for this. But I'm gonna wrap this up for now. We'll definitely come back to this. This Fairmont is gonna be a work in progress. We're not done yet. Frame connectors, a good idea? Abso-fraggin-lutely, that's what I'm saying. I got a lot of bang for the buck. $150, I got a chassis that's a lot more firm, that it just feels like a different vehicle when it goes over bumps. Now, did it cure the chassis flex 100%? No, it did not. Still have some issues closing those doors, but when you drive this thing down the road, it feels solid, which is a really good start, because we're gonna be upgrading the rest of this with this engine, transmission, suspension, all that. It's gonna be nice that we've got a good foundation to work with, especially if you have a convertible of Mustang of this vintage. It's gonna have a lot of body flex, because this one has a roof, and that roof actually helps give that body some structure. So if you don't have a roof, this is even more prevalent. So if you have a convertible Mustang, I would strongly recommend this upgrade for you. That said, I'm gonna wrap this up for now. This is a work in progress. We'll come back to those other upgrades and things that I talked about later. I wanna think about it a little bit and see if I can come up with a better plan. But if you have automotive questions that were not addressed in this video, I would ask that you head over to EricTheCarGuy.com. There's a welcome video there to tell you about all the amazing stuff we have to help you there. If you wish to connect with me socially, Google+, Facebook, Twitter, and now Instagram. Close each of my videos. Be safe, have fun, stay dirty. I'll see you next time.